Hello. Hi. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Lay's Real Talk. All right. Lay almost started on time. 9:31. How's that? 1 minute late. All right. Good. Good. Hi, everyone. Authentic Austin Ron. Janet Ma. The wisdom to know. Jay Litka. Oh, my good old friends. Well, welcome, everyone. I did a program on November 6th to talk about how China's economy is in deep trouble. And I said that by the end of September, the CCP's fiscal deficit had already reached 45%, and it's on track to break 50% by year end. To fill the widening gap, the government has been raising taxes, squeezing citizens, and quietly printing money. But now, China's October economic data has been released, and it's shocking. If September year-to-date data could still be dressed up to look somewhat acceptable, October's numbers are now flashing red. If there's a point where China's long downturn finally tipped into a free fall, October, in my opinion, was that turning point. So today, I want to show you why China's economy is heading into deep waters in the final quarter of 2025, and why 2026 is shaping up to be very problematic. I'll walk you through the numbers in the following categories: government, fiscal budget, investment, financing activity, real estate, exports, and CCP's money printing. Now, before we begin, I want to say one thing. Every number you see is the official data. It has already been quote unquote optimized and polished by the various departments of the government. And what we're looking at is the version after multiple cosmetic surgeries. So if these numbers, if these massaged numbers show collapse, you can imagine the reality behind them is much worse. All right, first things first, CCP's fiscal budget. I showed you this chart last time. As I mentioned then, by the end of September, the CCP's fiscal deficit has soared to 45%, nearly 9 trillion yuan against 19 trillion in revenue. So as you see, the gap between the two lines are growing further apart over the years. Now, take a look at the deficit numbers for October. Very interestingly, by the end of October, the overall deficit actually declined by 3% or 264 billion yuan. So October year-to-date deficit stood at 8.57 trillion, smaller than the 8.84 trillion deficit at the end of September. So a month-to-month decline in the fiscal deficit is, shall we say, interesting. Did the CCP suddenly find a way to balance its budget? So what exactly happened in October? Well, to figure that out, let's look at revenue expenses month by month. Revenue. Okay, so let's take a look at the revenue. Here's the full caliber fiscal revenue table. Let me make this bigger. Okay, so before May, just take a look at the last column. Before May, the numbers were terrible, right? 4 out of the first 5 months showed negative year-on-year growth. Please note that January and February were lumped together as we didn't have a January data. Then Beijing turned to extreme tax extraction measures for May, squeezing the economy dry at every corner. You can watch my November 6th program for details. And revenue did improve. So from June to September, fiscal revenue showed 4 consecutive months of positive growth, right? As you could see in this chart. But as predicted, in October, this desperate last squeeze taxation strategy finally hit its limit. So October's year-on-year revenue growth turned negative. Even though the drop seems small at only 0.6%, it came despite increases in consumption tax, income tax, social security taxes, and also in VAT. So this tells us two disturbing truths. One, even when the government, in what we Chinese say, kill the chicken to get the eggs, 杀鸡取卵, it's like extreme measure, right? Overly aggressive. You kill the chicken to get the eggs, but you end up not getting any eggs. So even though that in a very aggressive tax strategy, revenue can no longer grow. By the end of Q4, when the tax base is fully exhausted, there will be nothing left to squeeze. And then the second truth is revenue decline will only get worse and accelerate faster, likely into double digits as the economy deteriorates and the economic engines shut down. There will be no more taxes the CCP can squeeze very soon. The fiscal system will have no choice but to depend purely on money printing by the central bank. All right, now let's look at expenditures because that really gives us the real story. Let's see, in October, expenditures collapsed by a staggering 19%, one of the largest single-month drops ever recorded. Prior to that point, expenses kept growing. 4 out of the 10 months, expenditures had double-digit growth, right, as you could see. And then in October, it just suddenly swung to the other side and tanked by 19%. And that right there is the only reason the fiscal deficit shrank in October. When you have a revenue that fell 0.6% and expenditures falling 19%, you have a deficit. You have a deficit shrink. So now here's the question: was the CCP suddenly enthusiastic about austerity or fiscal austerity? No. It's much more likely that local governments hit a cash flow wall in October. CCP is not known for cutting expenses on their own. In a centrally controlled system, they cut only when they're forced to. So they were scrambling for money and slashing every cash outflow they could because they have cash flow problems. So this dramatic drop in expenditures is a clear warning that fiscal cash flow is snapping, and there's no way to repair it because it's not normal budget cutting. Okay, so although fiscal deficit declined in October, it's not a good sign. It means the various levels of governments are seriously run out of money. And since fiscal spending is in free fall, fixed asset investment must follow because government projects were or are the only thing keeping investment numbers alive. So now let's talk about fixed asset investment. I show you these numbers just to show you the pattern. I know some of you gave me the feedback that you're not a number person. It's okay. I'm not presenting the numbers in detail, but if you look at the pattern, you will see where the problem is. All right, so now let's take a look at fixed asset investment. I will try to stay very high level so you're not drowned in numbers. So now let's talk about total fixed asset investment. If you look at this trend, right, the growth rates for the past decade. If you just glance at the last column on the right, I mean, 2025 isn't the worst year. 2019 and 2023 were all double-digit contraction years, right? One at what? Let's see. Yeah, there were 12% and what? 15%, 13%. Anyway, they were double-digit contraction years. So if you look at year-to-year comparisons, 2025 isn't bad. However, if I showed you the monthly trend of 2025, you will see the problem. Here it is. Okay. Now, in the beginning months of the year, there were still some growth. But after June, as the extreme tax measures intensified, investment numbers began to deteriorate, and they're in the red. Ordinary people were squeezed dry. Private investment was dying, and only government-funded projects were holding the investment tables together. But by October, with fiscal expenditures collapsing, fixed asset investment dropped by 15.5%. And this is massive because it's even worse than the record 13% drop in 2019, right? So if you look at this historical chart, the worst year was 2019's 13% drop. But in October, we saw 15.5 point drop. So if a decline of this magnitude continues for more months, more people will be unemployed. One analyst even said that we would literally see people starving on the streets if investment drop at this level. So that's how serious it is. Now let's take a look at the financial side, the heart of China's economy. Now, at this stage, China is essentially a debt-driven economy. Debt expansion is the only remaining engine. If debt growth stalls, the economic heart stops beating. And here's what the financing table shows. For 2025. So up until July, China could still expand credit, barely keeping things limping along. But starting in August, new financing began to shrink. August was down 15.4%, September down 6.2%, and October, that's what, internet service, okay. That's what my thumbnail says, 42.2% down in financing activities. This is dramatic. This is nearly cutting half. It's a near total collapse. So 3 consecutive months of shrinking financing means the economy has already lost its driving force. The economic engine has died, and the recession is not coming, has already arrived. Okay, now let's move on to real estate. For most people, for most Chinese people, the economy really means one thing, the real estate. That's how obsessed the Chinese are with real estate. And the CCP knows this, which is why local governments are using administrative measures or pressure to silence pessimistic voices about the property market. I talked about that last week. Very oddly, many citizens want to believe the property market will bounce back. So they welcomed the government's draconian controls. But the most important metric is new housing sales, the lifeblood of developers and local government land finance. Secondhand home sales are independent of government and developers, which is why they're often excluded in this kind of metrics. So new home sales, okay, let's take a look. It's let me just give you some numbers that's not on this chart. So in 2021, new home sales peaked at 1.8 billion square meters. Is it? Yeah, 1.8 billion. No, I think was it billion or trillion? I don't even. I think it may be trillion. Yeah. Oh, I think it's trillion. I don't think it's billion square meters. I really think it's not billion. So basically, within 4 years, from 2021 to 2024, sales in terms of meters square footage were cut in half. So that's how dramatic the decline was. So for many people, still refuse to believe that China's real estate market. They still believe that China's real estate market will bounce back. So let's take a look at the monthly trend for 2025. Now these are million square meters, right? So these are the monthly numbers. The decline remained in the single digit during the first half. And then the single digit decline were still enough to make some Chinese to believe that sales have bottomed out. Prices can't fall any further, and a rebound is coming. But then by October, sales plunged to almost 20% in square meters. So in terms of value, it's even more. It plunged more than 25%. And developer investment plunged 23%. Personal mortgages, it's the lowest since 2008. It was only at 431 billion, and it's down by 30%. So now October is traditionally the golden month for real estate sales in China due to the national holiday, but it was disastrous. And weekly reports from major agencies show the collapse is accelerating. So November's decline could be approaching 30%. Now, developers are already near cash flow collapse because December and January are heavy cash out months. They are when project payments are due, when old debts must be rolled over, and when new loans require paying off old debts first. So under collapsing sales, remaining developers are almost certain to suffer collective cash flow breakdowns. Let's move on to exports. All years, officials and state media have bragged about how resilient China's exports were. The fact that the exports were holding up despite the US-China trade tensions. If you look at the monthly trend, exports enjoyed an uptick throughout the year until, like I said, October, when it turned red. But the truth is that this growth was nothing but exporters' final death struggle. They're dumping inventory to claim export tax rebates. They're scraping and selling factory machineries because they're losing money because they're forced to pay back extra tax penalties. The government, as part of the government's effort to intensify tax audits, they suddenly found a whole class of private businesses owning government back taxes. So private businesses are now forced to pay extra tax penalties. They're also getting squeezed by environmental, fire, labor, and hygiene bureaus because everyone is trying to levy fees and some kind of taxes from private businesses to meet their revenue quota. And of course, they're also being hammered by the US trade war. So it's very interesting. It was a turning point in October, right? It was a turning point in October when China's customs data, its calibrated export growth was down in the red territory. It was a negative 1%. In September, it was still 8+%. So from October onward, China's export sector will shrink rapidly. This is because exporters are not making money. So from January to October, export volume is up. Let me come back because these numbers are not on the slides. So what I have is export volume for October year to date was up 18%. Export value was up almost 8%, but price index fell 9%. So what does that mean? I mean, profit margins are near zero. And worse, November, there were several major developments in November. For example, Tesla has announced that China-made parts used in the North American market will drop to zero by 2027. GM announced that it's ending global procurement of China-made components by 2027. Apple, we know that 80% of AirPods, Apple Watch, and MacBook productions are moving to India and Vietnam. It's either moving or have moved to India. That's 80%. Starbucks, Burger King, Häagen-Dazs, and Decathlon, these brands are selling their China businesses. Their China businesses are up for sale. In addition to that, Central Asia's 5 countries signed long-term mineral and energy deals with the United States, bypassing China. And these 5 Central Asian countries are historically China's partners or strategic partners. So global supply chains are not diversifying, they are decoupling. So how has the CCP been handling all of this? Like I said, it's money printing. So the only thing holding the system up is Beijing's money printing scheme. And it's what it's called the reverse repo. It's buyouts. It's printing money out of thin air through buyout style reverse repos. So here's the mechanism. Let me show you the numbers. I updated this chart to include November. So Ministry of Finance issues bonds and commercial banks buy them. Seconds later, banks resell them to the central bank for 3 to 6 months. And when the term ends, the banks are supposed to buy them back. But in practice, the central bank keeps rolling them over and keep buying them. How do we know these numbers? Well, because the central banks put up a notice when they buy the bonds. So someone added up all the numbers from these announcements. So the banks never redeem anything. So this is pure money printing out of thin air, right? And as of mid-November, this is not end of November yet, the central bank has already printed 6.6 trillion yuan. Now, this money, it did not entirely flow into the real economy. A portion of it flowed into the capital markets, but bulk of it went into local government's infrastructure project, But 70% of these infrastructure projects or budgets, 70% of the budgets allocated to the infrastructure projects went into local officials' pockets. Only 30% was actually spent. So the corruption is 70%. Yeah, so 70% of the government budgets went into was embezzled. And that was then. People now say that the percentage is higher. It's now 90% or even higher. So if the central bank, let's assume it's 10, only 10% actually went into a local project, the 90% went into officials' pockets. So that means if the central bank printed 6.6 trillion, I'm sorry, what was that? 6.6 trillion. Then only 10% of that, 606 billion, actually entered real circulation. The other 6 trillion went somewhere else. They went into the officials' private cash hoards. They probably left China. They went to their offshore assets. But they're just not, they're not, it did not become real economic cash flow. Let's put it that way. So, I also want to share with you, I had some China's demographic data. I saw that today, and I thought it's very interesting. So 2025 is expected to produce the lowest number of births since the CCP took power in 1949. It's the year-to-date new birth was 5.8 million. So if you annualize that, the full year's estimate is about 6.1 million. That will be the lowest number since 1949, when China's population was only 500 million. So with an alleged 1.4 billion population, this is extremely low. Or China doesn't really have 1.4 billion people. Meanwhile, death is estimated at 12 million, 11.8 million. So that's almost twice as birth. You have twice as many people who die in 2025 than the number of new births. That's scary. Think about it. I mean, mathematically, this is unthinkable. I mean, the compound effect over a couple of years. I mean, I don't think this has happened overnight, like just in 2025. This has been going on for a while. But anyways, I'm not getting to my argument of what China's population is. So basically, 18 provinces are already in population decline officially, right? So Chinese government admits that. And allegedly, China has 300 million people aged 60 and above, and that's 22% of its population. And in the Northeast, that number is even higher. It's 31% in Liaoning and 30% in Heilongjiang. So almost like one in three people in the Northeast of China is an elderly person over 60 years old. And also, the education system is collapsing. I saw one media report quoting experts saying that the 2026 fall enrollment, so almost a year from now, so the fall enrollment in 2026 for first grade elementary school is expected to drop 22 to 28%. Although it didn't say from where. Is it from this year? When they say it's expected to drop 22 to 28%, I would imagine it's a year-over-year drop. but the report I read didn't mention. So that if it's a year-over-year drop, could you imagine children, we suddenly lost almost a quarter of children in that age group within a year? And if you really think about it, that's when that's children born in the early months of COVID, right? So 2026 will be 6 years old. If people goes to school at 7, so it will be kids born in 2019. So kids born in 2019 are down 22 to 28% from a year ago. That's 2018. Could you imagine this drop in 2027 when we factor in COVID casualty? It will be even more drastic. So, so when you line up every indicator we just went through today, the conclusion writes itself. October wasn't just another data point. It was the breaking point. The fiscal tank is empty, investment is collapsing, financing has frozen, the property market is cracking wide open, exports are losing their last lifeline. And the only thing holding the system together is a central bank printing money scheme. And even that's not helping because only a small percent of that money actually enters the real economy. So that's what the early stage of an economic free fall looks like. I think China is heading into the most difficult period since the reform era began. And 2026 won't be about how fast China or Beijing can recover. It will be about how long it can keep the system from unraveling completely. So I think 2026 will be an extremely difficult year for those living in China. That's all. That's all I have. I hope this is helpful information for you. And this Thursday, I want to give you a little announcement. So this Thursday, actually this Friday, November the 28th, will be the 5th anniversary of Lay's Real Talk. So on Thursday night, I'm going to do a slightly different program. I'm going to invite a fan who actually started his own YouTube channel and is doing very well. And he currently lives in Asia. And like myself, he is bilingual. And I think his insight, his experience will be valuable to this community. And we'll have an interesting dialogue about our views on CCP politics and geopolitics. So I hope you will join me on Thursday. And also we have I will play the song that Lei wrote for the occasion. So yeah, so I'm very excited about Thursday's program. Stay tuned. All right, let's see. Thank you, Charles, for the super sticker 1888. Oh, I love the number. Outstanding work, Lei. Well, thank you, Charles, for being there for me. Thank you. All right. Felix the cat, 69. Hi, Lei. People here think Xiaomi is doing great, while I hear their customers are complaining about terrible quality issues. It sounds like just like BYD to me. Xiaomi's quality is worse than BYD. I mean, BYD's quality is already bad, but by Chinese standard, BYD is better than Xiaomi. And then Xiaomi's latest scandal is its robot. It released a female robot that walked exactly like a model on the what do you call that? T-tai, on the T stage. But it turned out it was not a robot. It was a woman. It was a woman dressed up as a robot who did the walk. So they faked everything. And supposedly, once Xi Jinping found out it was staged, it was fake, it was not a real robot. He was very upset because he knows how much money he has given to Xiaomi. But a lot of these Chinese high-tech companies are scams. They're just scams, set up to swindle money from the government. Anyway, Xiaomi's quality is not even as good as BYD, even though BYD is already BYD's quality is already problematic. Okay, thank you for the question and then the super sticker. All right, let's see. Mindful living matters. Lei, is the decrease in other countries' manufacturing in China a main factor in the declining Chinese economy? Absolutely, yeah. Or perhaps it's a perfect storm of various factors. Well, it is a perfect storm of various factors. Everything. I think it's the combination of the trade war. It's it's a combination of trade war, the geopolitical tension, as more multinational companies are decoupling right now. It's also the result of more private businesses running under because they cannot stay profitable because of the heavy taxes from the local government. And I also think it has to do with population collapse to some extent. Because on one hand, you have a lot of young people who are out of jobs. But on the other hand, you don't have enough skilled workers to staff the factory floors. Because the young people today do not want to take those manufacturing jobs. So So on one hand, you have labor shortage. On the other hand, you have labor shortage for really skilled workers. On the other hand, you have an oversupply of laborers looking for a job. So China's education system is a complete failure. They're absolutely not preparing young people for the job market. So, all right. The wisdom to know. Highlight, China issued 4 billion euro in euro-denominated sovereign bonds in November, with the issuance taking place in Luxembourg. Could you please comment? How does it do? I asked the question, well, what if the CCP goes under? Like, what if next year the CCP collapses? What about the bondholders? Who's going to honor that bond? I don't know who's going to buy the bond, but of course you have these institutional investors who are well connected to CCP's elite families who will always be there to buy China's or CCP's sovereign bonds. But I wouldn't if I'm one of the institutional investors. If you really understand the dynamics of geopolitics and CCP politics, that government is highly fragile. So I don't know. I wouldn't even go near with any Chinese issued debt. No. I don't even want to get near get close to any Chinese bonds. It just does not have good track record. Okay. Someone said Lei is just making up stories. Well, if that's the case, I'm a great storyteller. If I'm making up stories, I think you guys should be amazed by my ability to make up stories. They're pretty good stories to make up. Don't you think so? So I took that as a compliment. Actually, I don't have that ability to make up stories as fascinating as these ones. I think the CCP, we should give the credit to the CCP for having the ability to cook up these, strangely fascinating numbers for us to look at. Yeah, you should give the credit. You should give the compliment to the CCP, to Xi Jinping, for being able to create these absolutely fascinating numbers. Yeah. Anyways, all right. Oh, here we have a question. Someone said, Lei, you had come up with a national figure of 600 to 800 million this year. We're talking about China's population. Okay, let me address this because I have seen people getting upset, experts, highly accomplished demographic experts getting upset with me talking about China's population on Danny Jones' channel. I don't think I quoted anyone in my talk with Danny. We were just talking about the China's population, and I said it's not a demographic question; it's a mathematical question. But it was a mathematical discussion, right? A theoretical discussion. For the record, I do not believe China has 1.4 billion people. For the record, I do not believe China has 1.2 billion people. I think China has between 500 million to 1 billion people. That's my that's my assessment. But that's a big range. But I think no one really knows China's true population at this point until the day we can do a census of the Chinese population. And we don't know when that will be. But I think when we do that, we'll find out China's population is, is between 500 million and 1 billion. So, but like I said, it's possible that it's between 6 and 800 million, right? Because it's really closer to the center. All right. Okay. Oh, here we're edgy number 1. Hey, Lei, you got a name check from China Insider. David Zhang. He has 1.42 million subs. Did you see a bump in subs? Got a name check for David Zhang. Yeah, I mean, it's good. I'm very stubborn. I know there's so many things you could do to grow your channel very fast, like doing shorts and doing a lot of things. But is it, I ask myself every day, am I doing this so that I have, you know what? I don't necessarily want to be the largest YouTube channel on China, but I do want to be the most influential one. So I'm not in any competition with people to be the largest YouTube channel, but I think I want to be the most influential one. So, because once you get into this mode of trying to grow your channel, I mean, you have to do certain things. Of course, you can get it to grow, but Chinese has the expression 千里之行始于足下. You walk your path one step at a time. I just want to make sure I walk every step well. And as far as how far that would take me, it's fine. I'm not attached to the results. I follow the doctrine that doing without pursuing, so yeah, because it's already very tiring to think about all these topics and contents. So so that's me. I know it's not a popular view. I know Chris probably is upset to hear that because he always asks me, what's your plan for us to grow to 1 million subscribers, and I said, I don't have any plan. um, because I really want to enjoy this as we grow. Who knows? Maybe one event will happen. Maybe when the day that China does the census and they found out that my prediction of China's population is correct, and then all of a sudden I'll grow to 2 million subs. uh, it would be nice to have 1 million subscribers, to be honest with you. I'm not saying that I don't want to. I do care. I do care. But what can I do? What can I do to grow to 1 million? Do you guys have any suggestions? Anyways. Okay. All right. Martin 8116. Well, thank you, Martin. C. Calvinist. We appreciate all your work. Happy Thanksgiving. Well, happy Thanksgiving. All right. Well, thank you very much. Have I reached the bottom? Yeah. I'm taking everything, I'm really against this very fast internet, this culture, this very fast internet age where everything, I want to, like slow food. There's a movement for slow food. And I'm all for that. I think people move too fast. They don't think thoroughly. So someone said, pass Z word late. Could you ask Tucker Carlson to appear on his show so you can explain the benefits of U.S. defending Taiwan against the Chinese invasion, because he's unaware of the situation? I will ask him. Well, it's a miss that he doesn't come to ask me. So, all right, maybe I'll have Nicole reach out. Nicole, are you there? Could you reach out to Tucker Carlson and say that it would be good if we have a conversation about why the U.S. needs to defend Taiwan? All right, we'll do that. Thank you. We need to have fun. We need to have fun. I think that's important. Even when we talk about, subjects that as terrible as the CCP, we need to have fun doing it. We cannot be too obsessed with the results and growth. I think the whole world is too much obsessed with growth, GDP growth, this growth, that growth, and we forgot why we're here. So they want to take the opposite approach. Brian Cobb, oh, look, would a PRC government fiscal collapse make a Taiwan invasion more likely? Even AI cannot answer this question. AI is no good. AI, I'm telling you, AI has all the mistakes I made in the past couple of weeks were the result of trusting AI. I got people's names wrong. I got numbers wrong because AI screwed me up. So now we have a policy. I have a policy with Chris that we need to fact check everything ourselves, humanly and manually, because AI is making more mistakes than before. So AI, okay. So when the PRC government fiscal collapse, it could go both ways. It depends on if it will pay the soldiers well. If the Chinese still has money to pay the Chinese military servicemen, that's one thing. But if it's running out of cash, as some people claim that the servicemen are not well paid, are not well compensated, then it's a seriously dangerous act, because once you start a war, the military have access to real munition. They don't, because the Chinese military, their munition is controlled. So when the military is given full munition, you don't know who they're open fire against, right? So it's dangerous. It could go both ways. But then as the economy collapses further, and internal social turmoil becomes the norm, the top leader needs to create an external crisis to justify a society being closed down. So I think nobody can answer that question because I think it will be a random decision made. We all expect that the top CCP leader will make a rational decision, will be sitting in the back room and recalculating the pros and cons. I don't think that's how it's going to be. It's going to be the craziest, most random decision he will make. So nobody can predict that. Yeah, it will be the most costly, dangerous decision, but it will be made in the most random manner. And that's why we don't know how it will go. It could go either direction. All right. Okay. Lei, could you Tucker Carlson. All right, that's all for tonight. How's that? Join me on Thursday. We'll have a fun program together. And I'll see you in 2 days. And meanwhile, enjoy Thanksgiving. Bye.